Today, I'm going to be helping you find good tenants. We're going to be looking at tenant screening, setting up contracts, and then also how to effectively manage your property. Very often when I speak to property investors, this is one of the biggest fears they have is finding good quality tenants. Whether you're a first-time landlord or an experienced investor, securing a quality tenant is always top priority. A good or bad tenant can make or break your property investment experience. So in this episode, we're going to be covering everything from tenant screening to contracts, inspections, and property management tips that will help you protect your prized investment. So first off, why do good tenants matter? Ultimately, it's for your peace of mind. Reliable tenants create reliable income streams, less stress, and fewer disputes. Bad tenants lead to missed payments, property damage, and legal headaches. Your property is an investment, and your tenants are partners in protecting that investment. So a thorough pre-screening is your first and most important step. A good screening today can save you thousands of rands and many headaches down the line. So with regards to tenant screening, let's look at some of the tips that I could share. When reviewing tenant applications, make sure that you use formal tenant application forms. These forms will be thorough and cover every single aspect that needs to be considered when making informed decisions, whether it be regarding income, past rental references, credit records. All of these will be contained in a formal application, and they should be considered thoroughly in your screening process. Be sure to request thorough personal information, things like employment details, proof of income. Be sure to also determine that the tenant can actually afford paying the rent as well as the required deposit. Very often, this would mean paying 3 times the equivalent of the monthly rent upon moving in, being their first month's worth of rental as well as 2 months deposit. As for deposits, the most important thing there is to not deviate from your deposit requirement. A deposit is the strongest form of security that you have in your investment property. And while many people will motivate for lowering deposit requirements in lieu of finding a tenant, my advice to you is be strict on the 2-month rental deposit requirement. Having less than 2 months worth of rental deposit will not get you very far in covering the cost of those damages. So to further help you employ a proper tenant screening, you need to make use of credit checks. Credit checks are a convenient service which can check the credit history and payment history of your tenant. There are a number of different platforms where these credit reports can be drawn, and they will give you great insight into the credit history and payment reliability of the tenant. Evaluate the affordability and ensure that the rent does not exceed 30 to 35% of their net disposable income. Some examples in this regard, where a tenant earns 30,000 Rand a month and the rental is equivalent to 10,000 Rand a month. They have a clean credit history with no late payments. This would be considered a good and clean application. In contrary to this, where you have a bad screening result, a tenant may potentially be earning 15,000 Rand a month, but applying for a property where the rental amounts to 12,000 Rand a month. The previous landlord reports that they have been making late payments, and their current credit bureau profile shows that they are still in arrears with some form of past credit. The next important thing to do is to check references. Most tenants would have come from some other rented property and will therefore have a tenant history. If you don't have access to software systems that allow you to check that tenant profile, make sure that you make contact with the previous owners where they have rented to check whether payments were made regularly and how the tenants conducted themselves during the duration of their previous lease. Look for consistency in payment history and reliability of payment. Ask about that behavior and how they maintained that property and communicated during the tenure of their lease. And the final tip for screening that tenant is to go through an interview process. We often speak about our gut and how you need to trust your gut. Ask open questions. Ask things like their work schedule, their family size, their pets, their lifestyle. All of these will help you have a better understanding and help you determine whether the lifestyle that they are living, the work schedule and family size that they are maintaining actually corresponds with their income, and the way that they are living their lives financially. This will help you determine a gut feeling as to the tenant's ability. Gut checks are very often, sort of determined by the communication style, honesty, responsiveness, and, sort of comparing these questions, the answers to what you are seeing reflected in their credit history, their bank statements, their income, their tenure of work. If you find that there's some, sort of disparity between these two and your gut is telling you not to enter into the lease agreement, simply don't. Red flags throughout these interview processes could be things like evasive answers, reluctance to provide references, and inconsistencies in financial information. So to summarize, if you employ a thorough application process, you do credit checks, you check your past references, and you go through a physical interview, this will help you do a proper tenant screening. In the next section, I want to tackle rental contracts and legal protection. While written lease agreements are not prescribed under South African law, they are certainly the best practice. Be sure to document your lease agreement with all the conditions that need to be addressed. Duration, payment terms, deposits, regularity of inspections, what happens upon expiry. All of these terms need to be contained in a written lease agreement. Be sure that all parties sign them. Every tenant that is part of the agreement, they should be signing this. If they are contributing towards the rent, they should be listed as a tenant. Don't fall in the trap where a single person signs the lease, but both of them are contributing towards the rent. If the person who's contributing but is not signed starts to default, you will have no legal recourse against them. Again, a signed lease agreement that is clear in its stipulations will prevent disputes before they even start. The next tip is to use property inspections. Property inspections serve as a strong tool for not only documenting the condition of the property, but also giving you insights into how the tenant is conducting themselves within the property. So ingoing inspections should always be done prior to the tenant moving in or upon them moving in. They should document the condition of the property, take good photos, note any issues within the property so disputes don't arise down the line. Periodic inspections should be scheduled, I'd say, every 4 to 6 months. And this will help you as the landlord catch any maintenance items which the tenants have failed to communicate to you. But again, will also serve as a sort of early warning detection for any irregularities that you might not have come across if you hadn't inspected that property. And then lastly, the outgoing inspection. This should document any damages and should be compared to the ingoing inspection to help determine whether the property has deteriorated and whether that deterioration is acceptable in terms of the lease agreement. And again, will help you support any claims which you as the landlord would make against the deposit. In the same way, it will also protect the tenant from not exposing themselves to any dubious claims from the landlord. Property inspections are therefore beneficial to not only owners but tenants too. It helps prevent disputes, identifies any problems early, and supports or defends deposit claims. Take photos, take videos, and make detailed notes. Be sure to document your inspections properly. Then the last tip relates specifically to the actual management of this lease. You can do it yourself or you can make use of a professional. I always advise people to make use of a professional rental agent to manage their rental property. Sure, you can save yourself a couple of rands by doing it yourself, but you need to ensure that you are up to date with the latest compliance and regulations, because the true test of a rental agent's grit will come when things start going wrong. If a tenant stops paying and you need to go through an eviction process, if all your procedures have not been correctly followed because you are unaware of them, you are exposing yourself to extended periods of time for eviction. Years worth of savings of not using a professional rental agent can quickly be wasted if you find yourself in this position. Services offered by property managers include proper tenant vetting, rental collection, maintenance coordination, and legal compliance. All of these make your life easier and will help you scale your portfolio. I need to emphasize that investing in a proper property manager can save you time, stress, and money, especially if you own multiple properties. So to close this episode off, be sure that you screen thoroughly, that you keep your deposits, that you use proper rental contracts, you do your inspections throughout the duration of the lease, and you make use of a professional property manager. Good tenants are a cornerstone to your property investment. So finding good tenants is of the utmost importance and maintaining them even more so. So finding the right tenant is not just a process of luck. It's a process of diligence, proper agreements, and regular inspections. So if you've had any experiences, whether they were good or bad, drop them in the comments below. I'd like to share your story and maybe use it in a future episode. Thank you for watching and supporting our channel. And remember to subscribe if you haven't yet done so to stay up to date with the latest content from the Property Corner.